The Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast.
Welcome to the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society, a podcast dedicated to suspense, crime, and horror stories from the golden age of radio. I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua. We love mysterious old-time radio stories, but do they stand the test of time? That's what we're here to find out.
We're almost done with our summer-long listener library series, featuring suggestions from you, our patient and loyal listeners. Jill writes, "Love you guys, listened to all your episodes, some several times. I'm pretty sure you haven't played Hands of Death from the sealed book, and I'd love to hear it again, plus your fabulous banter. I used to try to listen to your podcast before bed, but you had me laughing so hard I had to block out time just to listen. Keep it up. Thanks."
The Sealed Book was created by Robert Arthur and David Cogan, best remembered for their long-running anthology series, The Mysterious Traveler. Arthur and Cogan made a profitable habit of using the same scripts for multiple series. Many of the early Mysterious Traveler scripts were from Dark Destiny, a short-lived program the duo created for the New York Mutual Broadcasting affiliate WOR. In turn, the Sealed Book utilized scripts originally presented on The Mysterious Traveler. In the early 60s, many of the duo's scripts reappeared once again, this time on radio's outstanding theater of thrills, Suspense.
The Sealed Book ran on the Mutual Broadcasting Network from March 18th through September 9th, 1945. Although the scripts were recycled from The Mysterious Traveler, they were carefully chosen to create a specific effect. Author Richard J. Hand described the Sealed Book as consciously different from The Mysterious Traveler in that it tended to revel in the heightened melodrama of plot and performance rather than focus on the straight and generally understated journeys listeners shared with The Mysterious Traveler.
We should also mention the Sealed Book was nationally syndicated, so it didn't have an ongoing sponsor. Instead, director Jack McGregor inserted extravagant Hammond organ solos which could be removed by local affiliates and replaced with their own commercials. The existing copies of the Sealed Book retain the original organ riffs, and they're really long. So with that in mind, please enjoy Hands of Death, the debut episode of the Sealed Book, originally broadcast March 18th, 1945.
It's late at night, and a chill has set in. You're alone, and the only light you see is coming from an antique radio. Listen to the sounds coming from the speaker, listen to the music, and listen to the voices.
The Sealed Book.
Once again, the keeper of the book is ready to unlock the ponderous volume in which is recorded all the secrets and mysteries of mankind through the ages, all the lore and learning of the ancients, all the strange and mystifying stories of the past, the present, and the future. Keeper of the book, what tale will you tell us this time?
First, I must unlock the great padlock, which keeps the sealed book safe from prying eyes. Now, what story shall I tell you? I have here tales of every kind. Tales of murder, of madness, of dark deeds, and of events strange beyond all belief. There. Now, let me see. Yes. Here's a tale for you. A dark story of two brothers. One of them killed because he could not help himself. The other one was interested in murder, too, but in a very different way. The title of the tale is The Hands of Death. Here is the tale as it is written in the sealed book. It began in San Francisco on a night of thick, suffocating fog. A young man hurrying homeward turns a corner and bumps abruptly into a huge figure striding toward him.
Oh, excuse me. Fog is so thick I didn't see you.
It's all right. Tell me, do you live here? Here in San Francisco?
Why, yes, I do.
Do you know where Edward Morlock lives now?
Why, no, I never heard of him. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Wait.
But I've really got to get home.
I just want a light from your cigarette.
Oh, of course. Here, I'll hold it for you.
Just hold it like that. Well, what is it? What's the matter?
Nothing. It's nothing.
It's my hands, isn't it? They frightened you.
No, it's nothing.
My hands, they disgusted you.
No, of course not.
They frightened you because they're not like other people's hands.
No, let go of me. Are you sure you
thought I was a freak?
Let go of me. You're crazy.
I'm not crazy, do you hear? I'll show you. No. I'll show you.
Phantom strangler in San Francisco, victim killed in fire.
So, the Phantom Strangler is at work in San Francisco. Jennings will be interested in that.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Morlock.
Huh? Oh, yes, Jennings?
The postman just brought this package, sir.
Oh, package, eh? Give it to me.
Yes, sir.
Now, wheel me over to the window.
Of course, sir.
This is close enough, Jennings. This package, I suppose you noticed it came from my agent in New York?
Yes, sir, I did.
Then perhaps you can guess what's in it. Hey, Jennings?
No, sir, but I have no doubt it's another nice addition to your collection of objects having to do with famous murders, sir.
Yes, indeed, a nice addition. But speaking of murders, have you seen this morning's San Francisco paper yet?
No, sir.
Well, look at these headlines. Read them out loud.
Playboy murdered in fog. Phantom strangler breaks victim's neck. Then he's back. Your brother Kane is back.
Yes, back in San Francisco, looking for me.
And he'll keep looking for you. And if he finds you, he'll kill you.
As he's dedicated his life to that purpose. And all because he feels I cheated him out of his share of the money our father left us. Oh, it's a great pity.
Yes, sir. Of course, we know the truth.
Quite so. As you say, we know the truth. However, I hardly think Kane will find me here.
No, sir.
So we'll forget about him. Jennings, tomorrow afternoon, a neighbor's dropping in for tea.
A neighbor, sir?
Yes, Inspector Tennant, the head of the local police force. He's coming to view my little collection.
Of course, sir.
He may bring a friend with him. So have plenty of everything?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's all. What are you waiting for?
Excuse me, sir. I wanted to speak to you about this check you gave me yesterday for my month's salary.
Well, what about it? It's for the usual 500, isn't it?
Yes, sir, but you see, Mr. Morlock, I've been thinking in these times I ought to have more.
More? Just how much do you consider your services worth, Jennings?
Shall we say 1,000 a month?
1,000 a month?
It's quite reasonable, I think. After all, if I were to tell the authorities all I know about your father's will, and how it happened that the entire fortune came to you and none to Cain...
Never mind, Jennings. I'll make out another check.
Thank you, sir.
But be careful you don't drive me too far, or you may regret it.
Oh, I think I'll be safe enough, Mr. Morlock. After all, confined to that wheelchair as you are, you need me.
That's enough. You'll get your check later.
Yes, sir. Very good, Mr. Morlock.
So you're getting greedy, are you, Jennings? I must find some way to discourage you. Yes, some way to discourage you.
The next afternoon, Edward Morlock, the strange, crippled collector of murder relics, enjoyed himself thoroughly playing host to Police Inspector Tennant and Mr. Norman Smith, a criminologist friend of his. He began by showing them his latest acquisition, the one that had come by mail just the day before.
And now, gentlemen, look.
A cashmere shawl.
Yes, but no ordinary cashmere shawl. Until last month, it was owned by two very old sisters who lived in a dingy house in Baltimore.
In Baltimore?
Yes.
You mean that's the shawl?
Exactly, gentlemen. That's the shawl with which the two old ladies were strangled by a sneak thief.
Well, I'll be darned.
It's a prize worthy even of my collection, which is, I flatter myself, the most complete of its kind ever assembled.
Funny hobby, I'd call it.
Every man to his taste, Inspector. Murder is your business, but it's my hobby. Now, if you'll just pull back those curtains there, the rest of my collection is on the shelves behind them.
These curtains?
That's right.
Well, I'll be jiggered. This is most interesting, Mr. Morlock.
Yes, I knew you'd think so. Look there on the wall. An authentic headsman's axe. It was used in the brutal murder of the Baron de Morlaix, an ancestor of mine in the 15th century. And right there below it is the blood-stained dress worn by one of the victims of Jack the Ripper. And on the next shelf, you see... And so there, gentlemen, you have the highlights of my collection. How do you like them?
Well, if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, I'll say your collection does seem complete.
Thank
It is
you.
indeed. In fact, there's really nothing missing except perhaps a murderer and a victim.
What did you say?
That the only thing missing from your collection is a murderer and a victim.
A most interesting thought, Mr. Smith. And after all, why not?
Why not what?
Oh, excuse me, Inspector. I was just thinking out loud.
Oh. Well, I'm afraid we got to go now, Morlock. Hey, Smith? Yes, you're right, Inspector.
It's been a great pleasure having you, gentlemen. And I do hope you'll call again.
Yes, Mr. Morlock, you rang.
Yes, Jennings. Before you help me to bed, I want you to mail these letters.
Yes, sir.
They're to major newspapers in San Francisco and contain a message to be inserted in their personal columns.
A message?
Yes, to my brother Cain. We used to communicate this way in the past.
But, what?
Here is a copy of the message. You may read it.
If the gentleman with the unusual hands will visit his brother in Santa Villa, he will learn something to his advantage. You're inviting him here?
Exactly.
You've decided to play safe, to trap him, and turn him over to the police?
Oh, that's clever of you, Jennings. Yes, very clever. But you've already proved you're clever, haven't you? Now just take these letters out and mail them, and soon, quite soon, I think, we shall be seeing my dear brother Cain again.
Now for the rest of my story. The hands of death, as it is written in the sealed book. After Edward Morlock had put into effect his plan to bring his brother Cain to him, he sat in his wheelchair and waited, seeming much amused at some secret thought of his own. One day passed, then two, then three, and then the newspapers carried strange new headlines.
Extra, read all about it. Phantom Strangler in Los Angeles. Extra, read all about it.
So Brother Cain was in Los Angeles last night, Jennings. He's getting closer. I shouldn't be surprised if he arrived here tonight.
I don't like it.
Oh, nonsense, Jennings. You know you've got nothing to fear from Cain. Unless, of course, you're so careless as to make some remark about his hands.
I know, but he intends to kill you.
I think I'll be able to control him. I want you to bring me a glass of milk. Cain is very fond of milk.
Glass of milk?
With a triple dose of sleeping powder in it.
But I don't understand.
Never mind, just do as I say.
What's that?
I imagine that's Cain now.
Cain? Here, already?
Quick, I'll let him in. You get that glass of milk ready. And bring it in when I ring.
Yes, sir. When you ring, sir.
Oh, come in, Cain. I've unlocked the window.
Yes, I'll come in, Edward. Now that I've found you at last.
Well, I'd hardly say you found me, Cain. I sent for you.
It's the same thing. Now I'm where I can put my hands around your throat at last. I'm going to kill you. Do you hear? Kill you.
Cain, sit down.
What?
Sit down. I want to talk to you.
All right, I'll sit down, but you can't change my mind.
Tell me, Cain, how many people have you killed since you got out of the penitentiary?
7.
7 murders?
They looked at my hands. They were disgusted. I didn't kill them. My hands did. You hear? I didn't want to kill them, but my hands killed them anyway.
Why, of course, I understand. Your hands. Your great-grandfather had hands like yours, you know, Cain.
Don't talk about it anymore.
Of course not, Cain. But you must be hungry. I'll ring for Jennings. He'll fix something for you.
Yes, I am hungry.
But please, Cain, don't startle the poor fellow. He's very much afraid of you.
Why? Why is he afraid of me?
It's your hands. He says they give him nightmares.
My hands give him nightmares?
Oh, you mustn't blame him, Cain. He can't help it.
My hands give him nightmares.
Yes, sir. I've brought you a glass of milk, Mr. Morlock.
My hands frighten.
Oh, thank you, Jennings. Just put it down here.
Yes, sir.
Why are you looking at me like that, Jennings?
I'm not looking at you, Mr. Cain.
You're looking at my hands. They upset you. They give you nightmares.
No, Mr. Cain, that's not true.
I'll show you. I'll give you a reason to be afraid of my hands.
Mr. Morlock, help me.
I'll show you. I'll show
Let go, you're
you.
kidding. Help.
There. That'll teach you to be afraid of my hands.
You can let him go now, Cain.
He's dead. My hands, they've killed again.
Yes, he's dead. Oh, you've been very wicked, Cain.
I didn't want to kill him. My hands did it. My hands, you hear?
You must be quiet now, Cain. You must rest.
I didn't want to kill him.
Here, drink this milk. Then lie down and rest for a while. We'll talk some more in the morning.
All right. I'll drink it.
I'll take care of everything. That's right, Cain. Lie back and sleep. Sleep soundly. So, you would blackmail me, would you, Jennings? And you would kill me, would you, Cain? But I've been too clever for both of you. Hello. Hello, police headquarters. Connect me with Inspector Tennant, please. I want to report a murder. So, there you are, Inspector. Kane was in the penitentiary for assault with intent to kill. Apparently, he escaped since then. He's been seeking for me, meaning to kill me.
Good heavens, Morlock. Then he's the strangler who's been doing all these killing.
Yes, I'm afraid so. Oh, and I never guessed until he showed up tonight to kill me, because he thought, you see, quite wrongly, that I had cheated him of his inheritance. Jennings bravely came to my rescue, and Kane throttled him. Then I tricked Kane into drinking some drugged milk, and... well, there you are.
But why, man? Why? Why did he kill all these people?
Because of his hands.
His hands?
Well, you saw his hands. Tremendously strong. Not hands at all, really, but more like demon's claws. Kane is morbidly sensitive about his deformity. When he feels someone is frightened by his hands, he kills them. Just like that.
It's a good thing we got him at last.
You can take him along now quite safely, but be sure to keep him well locked up, Inspector, and don't let anyone get within reach of his hands.
A few weeks later, Kane Morlock entered the lethal chamber of the state penitentiary. Edward Morlock, the condemned man's invalid brother, was one of the few spectators. Kane Morlock, with his last breath, cursed his brother and swore that someday he would be avenged. Then he died. The following day, Inspector Tennant and his friend Norman Smith paid Edward Morlock another visit.
Oh, good evening, Inspector and Mr. Smith. It's very kind of you to stop by tonight.
We dropped in to see how you were making out, Mr. Morlock. Thought maybe, what with your trip yesterday and the shark, that perhaps...
No, I'm quite all right, thank you. What must be, must be. You see, I'm a philosopher.
You have somebody looking after you?
Yes, Philippe, a Filipino boy, is taking poor Jennings' place. Oh, and, gentlemen, that reminds me. I have something here that will interest you.
Mm-hmm. Something that'll interest us?
Yes, here on the table beside me. This jar.
Oh, a burial urn, isn't it, Mr. Morlock?
Exactly. And in this burial urn are the ashes of poor murdered Jennings.
Jennings' ashes?
Yes.
You mean you're going to keep them with you?
But of course, gentlemen. I was very fond of Jennings, very fond. What more fitting than that I should keep his ashes to remind me of his years of faithful service? Besides, well, I can always look upon them as part of my little collection.
Your collection?
Yes, Inspector. It was Mr. Smith here who pointed out that, complete as it was, it lacked both a murderer and his victim. Well, here are the ashes of the victim.
Great heavens.
That's rather a unique item, Mr. Morlock.
Yes, indeed. But the really choice addition to my collection is here in this box, which just arrived. Would you care to look at it, gentlemen?
What in the
Oh,
world?
now, you needn't guess. I'll lift the lid and, see.
Merciful heavens.
A pair of hands. The hands of your brother Kane.
Exactly.
I can't believe it.
But what is so strange about it, gentlemen? There are the ashes of a murder victim. Here are the unique and terrible hands that throttled him. Where in all the world will you find a collector who can boast such items as these?
You must be mad.
Morlock, did you plan all this from beginning to end?
Plan it? Mr. Smith, but how could I?
You're quite mad. We could never prove it.
You could prove nothing. Nothing.
Inspector, I think we'd better go.
Yes. Come on, let's get out of here before I do something I'd regret.
Call again any time, gentlemen. Easily upset, weren't they, Kane? Upset by your hands. Your great, strong hands that are going to become the prize items of my little collection. The distorted hands of a murderer. Ooh, how cold they are. And yet I can almost feel the murderous strength in them still. You wanted so bad that you'd close your hands about my throat, didn't you, Kane? But it's too late now. You're dead. And your hands are dead, too. Lifeless. Would you like to see how your hands look at my throat here? I'll place them there for you. See how nicely they fit around my neck. Just as if they... Oh, let go of me. Your hands. They're choking me. I can't breathe.
What is it? Where are you?
Inspector, look. They're on the floor.
Good Lord. It's Morlock. And... No, it can't be. His brother's hands are clutched around his throat. They've strangled him.
And that is the story of the Hands of Death, as it is written in the sealed book. Edward Morlock was quite dead when they found him, with his brother's severed hands about his throat. But they called his death heart failure. For who would believe that two dead hands by themselves could wreak the vengeance that King Morlock swore to have before he died? And perhaps it was heart failure. Perhaps Edward Morlock, thinking he felt the hands move, died of sheer terror. You'll have to decide for yourself which is true. The answer is not written here. But the sound of the great gong tells me I must lock the book once again.
One moment, Keeper of the Book. What story from the sealed book will you tell us next time?
Next time? Are you sure you want to know? Perhaps my next story will be about you. For I have here all the stories that ever happened, and many that have not yet come to pass. But I'll find one for you in just a moment.
And now, Keeper of the Book, have you found the story that you'll tell us next time?
Yes, I found one. It's the story about a man who found the secret of immortality, of life everlasting, and how he tried to use it to make himself master of the earth. The title of the tale is The King of the World.
Be sure to be with us again next time, when the great gong heralds another strange and exciting story from...
The Sealed Book.
The Sealed Book, written by Bob Arthur and David Cogan, is produced and directed by Jock McGregor.
That was The Hands of Death from the Sealed Book here on the Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society podcast. Once again, I'm Eric.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Joshua.
And that was a listener request coming to us from...
Jill.
Yeah, who said nice things. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Said in the email that I was the funniest. That was really nice.
I do not recall that.
No.
That's what I took from
Eric writes himself emails and signs them Jill. It's really weird.
How do you get through the day?
Beer.
Well, where do we begin with the Sealed Book? Oh, I know. Let's begin with the opening. How the Sealed Book opens.
Well, the thing I love is it has the person who was in charge of the book, mysterious figure, keeper of the book, and then the dedicated guy whose job it is to interact, interpret, deal with the guy with the book.
Right.
It's very corporate America, right? They need to downsize.
There's a lot of questions about what's going on here.
Do we know if there's any relationship between them stealing from the Hermit's Cave? Because that's the same character, is it not?
It sounds so much like the Hermit. My head canon is that this is a prequel to the Hermit's Cave.
Okay,
right?
great.
Where this was the Hermit's first job, and he's really bad at it. He got fired.
So he had to go off.
He's
and
unemployed.
Now he doesn't have the book anymore, but
Nope.
he just remembers some things from the book.
Bad times. He starts drinking. He ends up in a cave somewhere.
Murders, too.
He actually says, and murders, too, in here.
Yeah, there's a lot going on to get to the point of the story, isn't there?
They even take the time for the keeper to go through the book. You hear the pages turning. It's like, my bookmark fell out. Give me a second. But I will give him Foley credit.
Oh, yeah.
Because those pages are large. Someone used big sheets of paper to give the image of the sealed book as ponderous, as they described it.
Someone went and actually bought one of those coffee table books that were half price at Barnes & Noble that looked like a good idea when you're in the store. History of the World, yes, and it's gigantic.
I would bet that Sears catalog page is turning.
Speaking of, by the way, Sears Roebuck, Barnes & Noble, you can now buy reprints of the Sears Roebuck catalog.
Wow.
In their store. I
I'm
was like,
strangely
wow.
fascinated.
Yeah, there's just absolute reproductions. Anyway, I saw that and I was like, well, there we've come, full circle. But men's dress shirts, $2. It was a deal, man. It was a good deal. Should've
Can you
bought
get
some.
a Kindle edition of a Sears catalog? Because that'd be awesome.
We're just kind of dancing around the story here.
Yeah.
There's a lot to go into.
There really is. So he has a brother, Cain. Is it Edward?
Yes.
Edward
the classic brother pair.
Yes.
Cain and Edward.
Cain, yes. So brother Cain, and he is able. But Edward is not able. See, he's in a wheelchair.
Disabled.
He's disabled. So it's Cain and disabled. Do you think they did that on purpose? Is that a layer that's there, or
I
did
don't
I?
think disabled was a term they used a lot of the time.
Well, it's brilliant if they had. Instead of Cain and Abel, we're gonna make it Cain and disabled. Put the guy in a wheelchair.
60 years from now, this will be hilarious.
Well, I thought I was onto something. I also thought I was onto something when I found out his name was Edward. I hope his brother's name is Edmund. I thought we had a King Lear thing going on here with brothers at each other's throats, and a good one and a bad one, although they're both pretty much bad in this.
I love how of all the radio shows that we've listened to, that this episode of the Sealed Book is the one that Eric decides to really dig deep on, looking for the hidden layers.
I didn't look. They came to me because you guys are rubbing off on me. You got to keep your mind open. There's more happening here than meets the eye. Every word means something else. It's not just a guy chasing a guy and putting him in jail. That's not what's happening.
In this episode, a guy chases a guy. That's pretty much it.
So the story itself, there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes in judgment.
Suspenseful plot twists. I'm even going to stop myself because you're right. Holes. That's the big thing. He's next door to a police chief, and so he invited him over to view his murder museum.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. There's number one. Like, why are you doing that? What is the point? Unless it's to flaunt, I guess.
Oh, it is. He's an arrogant guy who's proud of his collection. He's just gloating over the fact that he's going to invite them over and show them everything.
I mean, it's a different time than it is now. I can't invite neighbors over to look at my collection of anything.
No, right?
I think from the story point of view, it's obviously ridiculous.
Yes.
But I find it so fun to listen to because every scene has more information and some surprise and twist. There are 4 or 5 old-time radio stories crammed into this single one, which makes it really exciting to listen to. You know, a guy with a brother who's a serial killer, that's just a story by itself. A guy who collects murder items, that's a story.
Blackmailing butler.
That's a whole story. I mean, they're just like, let's check all the boxes here and let's make some new boxes to check that nobody's ever heard of.
It's like a clearinghouse from the writer's room at the end of a season.
I will jump to my favorite part of the story, the part that just made me fall in love with it for all of its warts, which is at the end when he has a box with his brother's hands and then decides just to really rub it in his now dead face, I'm going to put your hands on my throat. And weird guy just rubbing dead brother's hands on himself. Like, that is so weird and wrong in a wonderful way. It was like David Lynch for me. Like, David Lynch came back in time.
It really was like David Lynch. That seems like a cut scene from Eraserhead or Blue Velvet or something.
That's an interesting...
Dennis Hopper breathing into these giant hands.
It's an interesting take on that. I'm going to read you my exact word for word. Like, as I was listening, I was typing. Oh, here come the hands. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. They're going to come alive. Don't do it. Don't put them around your neck. Don't. Oh! So my whole thing was, why are you doing that? Of course they're going to come alive. But you see it as this insane person, like you said, a Blue Velvet, a Silence of the Lambs, almost grotesque.
I mean, it was probably
enjoyment of
in
that.
function, just for the plot, we need to plausibly get these severed hands at this guy's throat.
Right, that's where I was going.
Yes, and they wanted to leave an ambiguous ending. The keeper says, maybe he died of a heart attack. I'm sorry, he says, maybe he died of a heart attack.
But yeah, once he started being strangled, I was like, oh, he's being strangled. It was just so enjoyably weird to have him...
Oh, Jim's like, I wish it were more erotic instead of horror.
But you knew that was coming. The hands are going to come alive and kill him.
I got so sidetracked. Like, what is he doing with those hands?
But here's the thing. You don't know it's coming because this story sort of defies expectation by how much weird stuff happens. There are plot holes, and then there are just things that say, yeah, that's a plot hole. We're going to leap right over it in an exciting manner. And that's...
It does have foreshadowing of that. It's just that everything else in it is so... face value straightforward that you don't realize until afterwards, oh, they did foreshadow that it was his hands were doing the killing, not him. And while I'm just jumping around on topics, the cute little old guy murderer voice, like, oh, I'm an angry killer and I'll kill you if you look at my... It's adorable.
Really?
Is the brother?
Yes.
The brother is the same character actor playing the hermit. Isn't it not the same? It's the narrator.
It very well might be.
Yeah, it sounds very similar.
Is it Herman Woolman from Simpsons?
Oh, yeah, a little like that. And I think it's because they wanted you to be sympathetic to him.
I think it works.
But they're my hands. I didn't murder anybody.
Yeah.
What are you looking at, Eric?
It's so much character work, it was distracting.
I loved it because they were all on the same page. The stuff that I don't like is when you're listening to a radio show and three actors are doing one thing, and then there's the one guy who's like, this is my big chance.
Oh,
this was
the
very
entire
intentional.
cast of Next Generation is what you're saying.
Wow.
There's one guy doing some good work, and then a bunch of other people, I don't know what they're doing. Yeah, it is distracting. You're right. That's what made that terrible. Thank you, Joshua.
I just solved the Next Generation for Eric.
It's Denise Crosby, right? She was doing the really good, serious work, and then everyone else is just...
Yeah.
Yes.
Patrick Stewart riding Denise Crosby's coattails.
Well, that guy, Stewart. Look at me. I'm all acty.
Sorry, Jill. And back on top.
So I get what you're saying. The premise of it is everybody's a freaky character. Everybody's over the top, so it's fine.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I included this quote from Richard J. Hand, who wrote a great book on horror radio, I think he really explicitly states what makes the sealed book interesting, and it is that it doesn't try to do anything understated. As we said in the intro, it just focuses on heightened melodrama and plot and performance, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's something really fun to see some of those other things just stripped away.
Yeah, I would say in this one, like, the performance is astounding. It's breathtaking, and the plot is a little confusing.
Well,
but if you're not sure what's going on, one of the characters is going to tell you at some point.
For example, there was a curse uttered by Cain before he died. We don't know that because for some reason they didn't see fit to have Cain utter the curse before he died.
I curse you.
That might be why. Maybe we recorded it and went, that's not very threatening.
Why couldn't we have heard that, though? We have to be told by the narrator.
That struck me when I first listened to it, too, but I have one theory is that by 1945, that as a plot device was so tried and true the guy on the electric chair who says he will come back and kill somebody. There are like 4 episodes of The Shadow like that. Lots of other horror suspense shows. So it might have just been, that old chestnut? Yeah, we'll just quick tell you in a sentence because you all know this scene.
I will tell you that it feels like, we're not going to go back and write something in. We're going to keep moving forward. Have him say it now that we thought of that. You know what I mean? Like it's a last-minute thought as they're cranking out a script.
I'm going to jump back to the David Lynch comparison because that omission of that scene reminded me a lot of particularly the recent Twin Peaks reboot where it just goes in a direction that you think it's going, what you think standard Western narrative would do, and then just totally subverts it. It also reminded me of the new Twin Peaks because the organ solos, the long organ solos. There's a brilliant scene in this series where David Lynch does a 3-minute scene of a guy sweeping a bar with green onions playing in the background. And for some reason, it's the most mesmerizing, suspenseful, weird thing I've ever seen, and I loved it.
It's a fine line, though, when you're trying to do things in a David Lynch kind of way and how quickly it can turn on you. In this case, for this show, it seemed haphazardly thrown together, Ed Wooded, but I also get what you're saying, or were they geniuses and that they were trying.
I don't think I used the word genius.
Genius is a strong word.
But were they trying to do that, or were they just cranked? This could very well be, that'll be fine. Put that on the air this week. It has that quality to it.
I don't know if they were using this from a previous script, but
they are. This was originally a Mysterious Traveler episode, like very early Mysterious Traveler.
Perhaps they were reusing a script that was, at the time it was created under a heavy deadline, like just finish the script. But it's performed with such gusto.
Or perhaps they dropped all the pages and they got in a different order and they just read them.
It moves in a logical progression of bizarre events.
Yes.
I don't think it's difficult to follow. Like I said, everyone explicitly states out loud their motives and intentions to the point that the visiting inspector actually calls Edward on it at one point and says, "What was that, Edward?" And Edward says, "Oh, nothing. I was just thinking out loud." As we all do, about murder.
Let's also go back and visit the butler's relationship with...
God, is Tim going to talk again?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just talking out loud. Let's go back to the butler, Tim.
He's blackmailing his wheelchair... addled. What's the right word there? Bound. Thank you. Wheelchair bound.
I like wheelchair addled. I've just had too much wheelchair tonight. It's a new designer drug.
Yes.
For $1,000 a month.
Right.
Yes. Which I understand is probably more shocking at the time. But
$1,400 by today's standards.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe this was written over 70 years ago.
Wow.
And it's still entertaining.
Yes. Because he is blackmailing because he knows that by some mysterious, unstated, largely unrelated to the current plot reason, he had stolen his brother's inheritance. I mean, related.
They don't tell us.
Yes, but it's secret.
I don't think it's
because they didn't write it.
It's only secret how he stole it, but that's boring. We just know that he stole his brother's inheritance.
I just they keep referring to it without saying it.
You're right. But it becomes the reason to kill the butler so that he can become the victim in an urn.
And I say that with love.
You see the backwards engineering of this script.
Yes.
They start with the end. It's a guy caressing his neck with his butler in an urn. How do we get there?
I can prove my point that I'm right, that they wrote this quickly on the fly and without a lot of thought. Because at the end, he says, "What's the next story?" I don't know. Still writing it. Let's take a quick 40-minute organ break. And then they came back, and they didn't say this, but it sounded like, there it is, I found one. Thanks for stalling, organ.
Yeah.
And somebody wrote on a napkin some plot premise and handed it to him. And they said, well, hell, we got to write that now.
I heard once, and I'm going to say this as though it were true, that back in the day when Superman comics you would feature like ridiculous Superman dressed as an Indian chief fighting dinosaurs. The way these stories would be created is they'd go find some 8-year-old and say, what do you want Superman to do? And they'd say like 3 random little kid things, and they'd make that cover and then hand it to their writers and artists and say, make this comic book.
That explains a lot of covers.
It really does.
A lot of Wonder Woman covers, too.
And that is a very plausible origin for this story.
Yes.
And his brother loves milk.
Boy, does he. So much that he's just, I know you hate me, and I know you know I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to drink that.
I just strangled a man. I am parched.
I thought this was really a bizarre, specific detail. Milk. And part of me was, are you trying to see the brother as someone who's kind of mentally damaged, so almost childlike? Is that why there's milk as an invitation? But
now you're giving it credit.
I know, but then I also heard another episode, which I will probably next year bring to this podcast, of Hall of Fantasy, that had another similar plot point from about the same year about this evil guy bringing somebody milk. And now I'm wondering if I am missing some sort of historical, cultural thing.
The classic way to hide sleeping powder is in milk?
Maybe that's it. I think this might have been a drugged drink as well, but it was also milk, and it totally stood out. It's this horrible, hard-boiled story, and then it's like, milk, anyone? Milk might not have been so associated with childhood and children then as it is today. I just throw that out there.
I like milk.
Grow up, Tim. Grow up. So if some listener out there who is a professor of milk, I'm sorry.
Milk adult.
Yeah. Eric's like, I own that movie.
Exactly. First of all, how did you get that job? I don't know. I'm trying to think of when sugared cereal became popular. It seems to me that'd be about the time that milk got popular with kids.
Yeah, the 50s. So maybe.
But then again, these are 3 men just talking right now. We realize that women make milk for babies. So I'm thinking, what? So I think the association with milk with children is probably always there.
Yeah, but I mean, as a drink you would have when you're not a baby, to strengthen their bones. It's associated with children's continued growth through adolescence. I know about lactation.
I think it's giving this story too much credit to say there's a layer here. See how childlike he is. I don't think that's on purpose, because if it is, then the cane versus disabled is also still in the mix and a possibility.
Yeah, right. Anyway, let's talk about milk more, though.
This might be the episode that Jill can actually fall asleep to, as far as our banter goes.
Good night, Jill.
All right, let's vote.
I would not call this a classic.
Good idea.
It stands the test of time to me in as much as it is so off the wall and weird that it becomes very modern in some ways. It does have the quaint elements that sometimes get ascribed to classic horror like this, of characters stating exactly what they're thinking and doing, but what they think and do is so weird.
Right?
That I would say it stands the test of time.
I'm going to agree with Tim. I think it definitely stands the test of time, but in a truly bizarre way, fitting this episode. That the antiquated moments in it are all matched by things that seem very modern in its seeming self-awareness and its desire to lean into these tropes and then say, hey, how about some more tropes? How about you want plot? I got lots of plot. Not a lot of sense, but a lot of plot. I just love it. I've heard this before. Jill recommended it, and I have listened to it several times for this podcast. I've probably listened to this episode 5 times, and it continues to charm.
I will say that it stands a test of time. I think there's a lot of interesting things, and it's definitely indicative of a style of the time and of this show, and it doesn't make any bones about what it is, so it's very stylized. It's pretty harmless. It isn't scary. It isn't suspenseful. It's pretty harmless, fun horror.
I would listen to it again.
I wouldn't, but sure.
It has a murder shawl in it.
There is a murder shawl. There is a.
Did you imagine him wearing the murder shawl while he was rubbing his brother's hands against his neck? I did.
It actually struck me that they were thinking, okay, we got to set up this murder museum. What imaginary props do we have? Oh, I have an imaginary shawl. Let's use that for this scene. Not like a gun or a
cleaver, shawl. That's a tough way to go. You know? If your last thoughts, like, cleaver, of course.
Yeah.
Gun, of course. Shawl, are you kidding?
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's insult to injury.
But if we decide to form an improv group, can we call ourselves Murder Shawl?
Murder Shawl.
Done.
Yep, absolutely. I say yes because there's absolutely zero chance
of us forming an
improv group. No.
Anyway, good night, Jill.
Tim, tell them stuff.
Please go visit ghoulishdelights.com. That's where you'll find other episodes of this podcast. You'll also find information about our live performances. It's also a way to get a hold of us. If you have requests you'd like to make, like our fine listeners, like Jill, you can go to ghoulishdelights.com and fill out a contact form. If you're contact-addled and like to reach us at ghoulishdelights.com. You can also reach us. There's links there to our Facebook page and Instagram and Twitter. And you can get a hold of us that way.
That's why we can't do improv.
We're too wheelchair-addled to do improv. You can also go to patreon.com/themorals and support this podcast if you are so inclined. We've got lots of great rewards for different levels of membership. We have buttons, membership cards, T-shirts. We have a monthly members-only podcast, The Secrets of the Mysterious Old Radio. We have passed our first 2 goals, and so we owe you guys some rewards. Right. And that transitions nicely into episode 100 of this podcast, which is going to be our first reward for passing the 100 mark on Patreon, and that is going to be the War of the Worlds. We will be discussing that on a big double-sized episode, and then our next reward at our 150 mark, which we passed, is to listen to and discuss 3 Skeleton Key. So we got some big classics coming up, so stay tuned.
All right. Can someone give me a suggestion of a flower? Any flower.
Lilies.
Lilies, good. Okay.
Abraham Lincoln.
No, we'll go with lilies. I heard lilies. Next time, we're going to do Let the Lilies Consider from Quiet Please. Until then.
Look out!
One moment, keeper of the book. What story from the sealed book will you tell us next time?
Next time? I'll find one for you in just a moment.
Have you found the story that you'll tell us next time?
Yes, I found one.